a warm welcome to you all. I am the Senior Branch Manager in IoD Scotland, but we're all in the right place because our programmes are all the same, no matter where you sit them, virtually or face-to-face. It just so happens that I'm hosting the session today with my colleague Juliet. So thank you so much for taking an hour of your time this morning to come and find out about what we have at the Institute and what we can offer you. Appreciate that everybody comes for different reasons. Some of you may be here to find out about the Chartered Director journey, or whether you're interested in board performance, or whether you're actually interested in just the individual modules. But we're going to give you a really lovely overview of how it all fits together. So it will give you really good background on how you may wish to start your journey if you haven't already started with us at the Institute of Directors. So I'll just quickly go through what we're going to cover today. You're going to meet Deborah, who is our course tutor, and she's going to give you a great background to how the certificate fits together, the individual modules, and how that kind of follows through onto the Chartered Director journey if you are interested in taking the whole gambit with us. I'm sure you will be enthralled by the time we finished our session this morning. And also Sean is going to talk to us today about his journey as a Chartered Director, and what it means to him. So please do take the opportunity to ask him lots of questions, because he's gone through the whole gambit, the whole journey, has done all the hard work. So we have a great opportunity to ask and to hear from him. And then my colleague Josh will be joining us a little bit later in the session. He's going to be talking to you about the really practical stuff that you need to know: how you book on, how the exams look, what the costs are, the dates for the modules in Q1 or next year. So I really hope that we managed to cover everything for you. Please use the chat function throughout the session. There's lots of opportunities kind of to interrupt and ask questions, both when Deborah's finished her section and also for Sean and at the end. And if we can't cover anything, we certainly can find out for you and come back to you after the session. So that's it for me, and I'm going to hand over to Deborah. Thank you so much, Deborah, and she's going to give you a great introduction to this certificate in company direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone. Hopefully we can answer all of your questions and inspire you to think about taking the certificate. As you can see, my name's Deborah Morton-Dare. I'm one of the course leaders with the IoD. I'm actually the program lead on the Finance for Non-Finance Directors module, but I also am one of the course leaders on the role of the director and the board. So many of us do a couple of the courses, and I've also recently started presenting the diploma as well. So hopefully I can give you some insight to quite a lot of the courses. And of course, I've taken the program myself and passed the certificate and the diploma. So I've certainly been there and can give you some actual how to do it well experience. So we will give you an overview of the different modules, and I'll talk through in a moment what you will get from them all and why you should be taking them. So really trying to give you that overview. My background, I'm a chartered accountant originally. I qualified with one of the big four accountancy firms in London, and I started off my career in corporate finance. And the great thing about that was it gave me such a huge wide-ranging experiences of many different businesses and sectors. So really valuable early learning to get that overview. I spent some time in venture capital, so I was lucky enough to look at early stage businesses, which I have to say throughout my career has been one of my big passions to get involved there. And as a result of that, I got probably way too early the job of a non-executive director. If you're the funder, you often get that role, and we'll talk later about nominee directors when we get onto that. I've continued to hold directorship positions throughout my career, particularly non-executive at the moment, charity as well as commercial, so a wide range of those. And my final hat is that I'm with the professional development at the Investor Relations Society, which looks at communicating listed companies, communicating with the market. So that's me in a little bit of a nutshell. So what are we going to start with? The director competency framework, I think, is absolutely should be your starting point. This will really help you look at where you think the gaps are in the skills you need as a director. And I think this is on the IoD Academy, so you can certainly find this on the IoD website. And we recommend that this is often used as part of your board evaluation processes. So what it will look at, it looks at 15 core competencies across the 3 dimensions. And I think this is one of the areas where the IoD is different from some of the more academic qualifications or courses that you can go on. So this really gives you the very broad 15 core competencies. And you'll see on the left-hand side, we have the orange ones, the knowledge, and those absolutely fit in with the 4 modules that we're going to talk about in a bit more detail in a moment: finance, strategy, leadership, and corporate governance. So that's the knowledge that's absolutely essential. There's also the skills, so how you apply that knowledge, what kind of attitude you bring to the board, what kind of skills that you can bring. And that is obviously taught throughout this certificate, but also very much focused on when you hopefully go on and take the diploma, which is the next level. And then the mindset one, again, this to me is one of the differences with the IoD qualification and certificate. So really looking at the mindset of a board director. We'll talk about that big step that you have to take if you've previously been a manager in a business and then you become a board director. And the mindset really is where that step will help you make that step. And the independent thinking one to me is one of the big areas. So we'll look at that as we go through. So we try and cover it right from the start when we're looking at the certificate, but I suppose the focus of the certificate is on the knowledge. The focus of the diploma is more on the skills, and the focus of the final stage, the chartered director, is on your mindset, but we do cover them all the way through. So what does the certificate cover? So we have 4 modules, and in order to obtain the certificate, you have to take all 4. Having said that, if you're a qualified accountant and there is a list of the recognized qualifications, you may be able to get an exemption from the finance for non-finance directors, but the rest of them are all compulsory to take. So the role of the director and board, you can take these modules in whichever order you want, but I would recommend that you take this one first. It's the opening scene setting, it sets the landscape, it really makes you absolutely understand your duties and legal responsibilities and obligations as a director. And I think for many directors, you've been newly appointed, you come on and you think, oh, this is fantastic, I've just been given a promotion here and I'm really thrilled about it. And actually you then come on this and you realize, oh dear, no one told me what the legal responsibilities and duties are. So it will really enable you to fulfill those duties and run the business in a responsible and ethical way. So we look at corporate governance, we look at your duties as a director, which we will look at in a bit more detail at the moment, and how you can apply the principles of corporate governance, the best practice, whatever size your business is. So I would recommend that as an opening gambit as in your introduction to the certificate. Now, finance for non-finance directors, as I said, I am the program lead on this. I know for some people it absolutely creates fear and terror when they think about the prospect of doing finance. But let me absolutely reassure you that this is not about maths. I might be a qualified accountant, but I find numbers very, very boring. So you won't be doing numbers. That's not your role as a non-finance director. But what we want you to get from that is the confidence and the ability to firstly engage fully in all board discussions, fulfill your legal duties because you are responsible for all of the decisions being made, so you need to understand it, and very importantly, have the confidence to challenge your finance director and make sure that you've been given all the information you needed to be confident that the board as a whole is making the most appropriate decisions. So it is not about numbers, it is about how can we use finance, understand the questions you should be asking and the conversations you need to be engaging in. And I'm really focused there on how do we make our businesses resilient and how do we make them deliver, how do we make them really good purpose-driven businesses that deliver value for all stakeholders. So that's what the finance for non-finance directors one will cover. Now, strategy for a director. Obviously, we all think if we're directors, we've probably done some strategy before, but I think what was really wonderful about this course for me was that it gave you the real toolkit you need to develop, consider strategic options, making sure that you are focusing on that strategy in line with your vision and purpose. So really making that link. So giving the creation and the implementation and the evaluation of your strategy. So it really was giving a wonderful toolkit and framework to be able to do that. And of course, leadership. I don't personally deliver on this module, but I do know that some of the other course leaders are fully aware that all people who have been promoted to being a director or been given the role of a director think that they all know all about leadership, but you will discover there is so much more that you can do to take this to board level leadership. And I think that's what you will get from this, is that commercial application. Yes, you'll be given the principles, but this really is, how do I now lead on the board? How do I have a presence on the board and lead the company from the perspective of a board director rather than, for example, from a managerial? So it will be really about creating influence, engaging followers and stakeholders for maximum impact. So that's an overview of the 4 modules that are part of the certificate in company direction. And we do find that sometimes people would just come on one of them with no original intention to take it further, but then they start realizing the value, not just of the knowledge you'll gain, but also of the interaction and the networking with the other directors on the program. So we're going to do a poll to start off with. So you will see a poll appearing in your screen in front of you. In a company that is a going concern, well, what does that mean? It means that you are able to continue because you're able to pay your debts as they fall due. So no question that this business is about to fail. So the company is a going concern. To whom does the director primarily owe their duties to? And the word to focus on there is primarily. So I'm just going to give you a moment to answer that, and Juliet will let me know when we know whether people have answered or not. Okay, so interesting. So yeah, the common sense feeling is it's the shareholders. By the way, members is just the legal term for shareholders. And absolutely, people think that the common sense answer here is the shareholders or members. But actually, the correct answer is the company. Your duty as a director is to the company as a whole. A limited company is a separate legal entity. It's a person, and that is who the board owes its duties to, the company as a whole. Yes, obviously the shareholders will be the beneficiaries of that, but it is to the company as a whole, not the shareholders. So shareholders individually may have very, very different agendas, and you can't fulfill all of their needs and concerns. You are there to act in the best interest of the company. And in a moment, we're going to look at Section 172 of the Companies Act on directors' duties, which is certainly very much a topic of conversation at the moment over reforms, over how businesses are run and the future of audit. You only owe a duty to the company's creditors if if the business is in an insolvent situation. So because this business is a going concern, you don't owe your primary duty to them. And we'll come back and look at section 172 in a bit more detail at the moment. Okay, so let's look at our next slide. Who is a director? This is a really interesting one. It's very complicated, to be honest. It's not that straightforward. So the overall definition is any person occupying the position of a director by whatever name called. Oh, that's the legal definition. I'm not sure how helpful it is, to be honest. It's the occupying the position of a director that is what you need to be focusing on with this. So the easiest one is you're formally appointed by law. So you're an executive director or a non-executive. What does a corporate director mean? That is where a company holds the position of a corporate. That is, in many jurisdictions, it's limited because you haven't got a person occupying the position, you've got a company. And we talk a bit more about that on the course. An alternate is where I'm a appointed director on the board and I'm unable to attend the meeting. So I appoint an alternate to attend in my place. And we're going to talk a lot about independence. And it's really important that if I'm a director and I appoint someone else, so for example, let's say that I decide I'm going to appoint Juliet or Natasha as my alternate, I can't tell them how to vote because they have to show independent thought and vote given the information and discussion they are being presented with in the board meetings. But an alternate is there in place of an existing director who's unable to attend. They could themselves also be a director or not. Nominee is a really difficult position. I've certainly held this, as I was saying early on in my career. I got positions because I was working for one of the major shareholders. So a nominee is where you are appointed by someone else. Normally, often the major shareholder will appoint a nominee director to represent them on the board. And that is a very difficult position to hold because you have a conflict. Obviously, the people who pay your salary that you are representing expect you to make decisions in their interest, but that is not what you are there to do. You are supposed to make decisions in the interest of the company as a whole. So it can be a difficult position. It's perfectly legal. There's nothing wrong with it, and it's very common, but you have to be mindful that you have two hats on. And when you're in the board, you are there to represent the company and act in their best interest. Shadow director. This is very common, for example, in a family business. Someone has set it up and passed it on to their children, or you've got an entrepreneur who set up a business and is now stepping back, but they are continuing to pull the strings in the background. So someone in accordance with whose instructions the board is accustomed to act. You also have someone who acts as a director by conduct. So they're not formally appointed, but they perform the functions of a director. So this, again, you are seen by outsiders in particular to be a director. You're acting as if you are, but you haven't formally been appointed. So all of those, it can be a tricky situation because you've got to think about, have I been formally appointed? Do people perceive me as a director, but I actually haven't been formally appointed? All of these in front of you have exactly the same responsibilities and legal duties. So by whatever name they're called, they have those responsibilities. So I think my advice is always clarify your status. And if you are a director or not a director, you want to be clear which one it is so that you are aware of your legal responsibilities, and so are others. And this is particularly the case because just because you're called a director doesn't mean you are. This is very common in large organizations. You can be a director of marketing, but you don't attend board positions. And I think increasingly the advice is best practice is to not give that title of director, head of, or something else is a far better title to make it clear to other people you are not a board director. So just because you've got the name doesn't mean you are, and just because you haven't got the name doesn't mean you aren't. So it does make it complicated, and it's worth clarifying. This is the crux of it, Directors' General Duties. These are under Companies Act 2006, Section 170 gives the duties of a director. And this is one of the things that we talk a lot about and is at the heart of the role of director on the board. So the first one is act within powers. You are there to run the business on behalf of the company, in the best interests of the company, on behalf of the shareholders. They give you the powers. You don't have unlimited powers as a director. And if you want to know what your powers are, the place that you look is in your articles. So if you've never read the Articles of Association, it might be a good starting point, because that is what your powers are. This is where you get the authority and the powers to act. This is the big one, Section 172. It's really important at the moment, partly because sadly, an awful lot of directors are not being seen to be adhering to this. So promote the success of the company. That's where we were saying that is your primary duty to the company, not to the shareholders. And it's actually quite a lengthy elaboration around this. So promote the success of a company. A director must act in the way they consider in good faith would be most likely to promote the success of the company for the benefit of the shareholders as a whole, and in so doing have regard, amongst other matters, to the likely consequences of a decision in the long term, the interest of the company's employees, the need to foster business relationships with suppliers, customers, and others, the impact of your operations on the community and the environment, and the desirability of the company maintaining a reputation for high standards of business conduct, and you must act fairly between all of the shareholders. So it's pretty lengthy, and it's been a huge topic of conversation, sadly, partly because of the Carillion collapse about 3.5 years ago, and the directors of Carillion are being prosecuted, some of them, because they have failed to fulfill this duty, among other things. So promote the success of the company. It is a big area that you need to be aware of, and that long-term decision making is something that's always been there, but quite a lot of directors don't seem to take note of that. So the overriding question you have to ask is this in the interest of the company as a whole? And exercising independent judgment. As I said, this can be hard. It's very hard if you are a nominee director, without a doubt, because you are representing someone else. It can be very difficult if you're, for example, an executive director and you're on the board along with your CEO, who's your boss in normal life, but it's not your boss in the boardroom. In the boardroom, we all are one amongst equals, and we have to exercise independent judgment. We shouldn't be making decisions having been told by someone else. And do you remember I was saying with the alternate director, they have to exercise independent judgment in the decision they make when they are on the board as an alternate for another director who's not present. Reasonable care, skill, and diligence. I think the easiest way to understand this one is it's often called the dimness test or the thickness test. Were you too thick to make the right decision or not? Did you actually exercise reasonable care, skill, and diligence? Did you ask all the questions? Were you satisfied that the right challenges had been made, and we'd explored all of the options and the likely consequences of a decision. And as I've said before, my pet module is obviously the finance one, and that's somewhere where I really want to give you the skills and the knowledge to be able to be confident that you've applied those to exercise reasonable care, skill and diligence when you're considering the financial implications of a decision. It is absolutely important. You are one amongst equals, and you are all collectively responsible for the decision that is being made. So if you don't understand the topic being discussed, you've got to either get independent advice or you've got to challenge until you do understand. Now, collective responsibility doesn't necessarily mean individual culpability. Obviously, a qualified finance person is expected to have a higher standard of knowledge than someone who's not, but that does not mean the other directors can hide behind the CFO. So really important that you've taken the appropriate steps to make sure that you've understood the implications of all board decisions. Don't be looked at as being too dim to have fulfilled that duty. Conflicts of interest. Many directors sometimes experience a situation where there's a conflict of interest. You have to make sure that all directors on the board are aware of it, and if necessary, you would maybe excuse yourself from the meeting whilst a decision is being made on that. So again, this is somewhere where, having held the role as a nominee, I frequently had to declare a conflict of interest and excuse myself from that decision-making process. It's up to the board as a whole to decide whether you need to excuse yourself or whether you can be involved in that decision or not. But you are there to act in the best interest of the company as a whole. Now, obviously, this is very much the elaborated on by the subsequent Bribery Act in 2010, but it is also enshrined in Companies Act 2006, that you should not be accepting benefits from third parties, and you really can't be seen to be either doing things or not doing things which would be likely to be regarded as being influenced by benefits that you've received. So Bribery Act has definitely expanded this, but the basic principle is there under Section 176 of the Companies Acts. It's to do with the independent judgment again, isn't it? And if there is a proposed transaction, you should as early as possible declare any interest. And again, the same, is this going to compromise your ability to exercise independent judgment? So I hope you'll see that actually these are all linked. They're not separate in silos. They are very much linked. That avoiding conflict of interest is to do with exercising independent judgment, as is exercising reasonable care, skill and diligence. What happens if you breach your duties? And this is what you really want to understand. Well, who can take action if you do breach your duty, you don't fulfill one of those criteria? Well, the company can, absolutely. The state can. For example, I was saying with Carillion, at the moment, the state is prosecuting the former directors of Carillion for breaching their duties. Regulators, many of you may be in sectors that are regulated industry, in which case the regulator may well take that action. Do you remember I said your primary duty switches from the company as a whole to creditors if you're in an insolvent situation. So the creditors can and very much do take action against the directors in an insolvency. And the shareholders may well do as well. Now, this is the tricky bit and the one that you should maybe be focused on if you're concerned about this. What are the possible consequences for the breach of duty? You can be fined. You can be disqualified. So the business regulator is going for disqualification for 6 of the former directors of Carillion, and some of them were no longer on the board at the time of the insolvency. So they are being prosecuted for disqualification. Imprisonment in very extreme situations, it doesn't often happen, but obviously there are situations in which it will. Injunction to stop you doing something. Damages to if you have caused loss to people, and I would assume that you're going to be dismissed if you are being prosecuted for breach of duty. And sometimes you may be asked to make a personal contribution. So this does look like a bit of a scary list of things, doesn't it? So I think the starting point is, as directors, we should all be aware and conscious of our directors' duties and making sure collectively as a board we are adhering to them. We've got another poll now. So which of the following statements best describes the functions and status of a non-executive director? And there is multiple choice on this. You may want to choose more than one option. And we'll share the results when everybody has had a chance to vote.
They're still coming in, Deborah.
Okay, I'll wait. Yeah, I think this one's tricky, particularly because you can choose multiple choices. So it's for a non-executive director. Okay, interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Absolutely. I'm delighted to see one amongst equals. Yes, you are a non-executive or an executive director. You are one amongst equals. Ah, that's an interesting one. The correct answer, there are two correct answers, is one amongst equals, absolutely, and provides constructive challenge to the board. You are not just there for governance compliance, because there is so much more. You absolutely, I'm really pleased to see no one says does not have the same legal responsibilities, because absolutely you do. And common sense might say, well, I'm only there part-time. How can I be seen to have the same responsibilities? But I'm afraid you do. So, you know, if you are, you've really got to make sure that you've been asking the right questions and getting sufficient knowledge on that. And often manage day-to-day organizational, absolutely not. Okay, thank you. So let's move on. So once you've completed the certificate, I really want to encourage you to go on and take the diploma, which is the next stage. For me, I found this one of the most inspirational experiences, a 3-day course where you're really exploring how to put into practice that knowledge and how to develop your performance on the board. And it is amazing to be working with the other people that will be on the program with you throughout the 3 days on various case studies. So peer group support, challenge and simulation, and mirroring the ways in which a board can be operated, and how you analyze information, try and focus on the key issues that you need to address in the short, medium and long term, and really think about the best ways of coming to decisions as a board member. So I would absolutely encourage you all to consider that as your next step. It was invaluable to me. And the final step in the route to Chartered Director is the Chartered Director one. And I'm now going to hand over to Sean, who is going to give you some great experience of his own journey doing that. So I'm now going to hand over to Sean on that one.
Thank you, Deborah. Morning, everybody. As you can see, there's quite a lot there that Deborah's gone through, which I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my experience. By way of background, I am the Compliance and Sustainability Director at Royal Mail. My background and kind of areas of focus are statutory compliance, regulatory compliance, safety, health, well-being, etc. And I'll talk to you a little bit how I've used my learning with the IoD in those areas. But before I go on, I just want to build on one point which Deborah made early on, which is the one that most people get most anxious about, and that is the financial qualification, the financial aspects of the qualifications. I just want to echo what Deborah said, that you don't need to be an expert mathematician. You just need to learn to be able to hold your own and navigate your way around finance and figures. And so just don't be too concerned or worried. I know I was particularly concerned about that that aspect, but I can say it's not about making you an accountant or an absolute expert. It's to give you a broader appreciation and understanding of those various aspects. So I've got a long-standing relationship with the IoD since 2005-06. I did the certificate, I did the diploma, then I applied those in my kind of day-to-day practice, and then I went for the chartered director. So my particular route saw me do the certificate and the diploma back to back, and then there was a period of 8 or 9 years before I went for the chartered director. And the reason that I chose that particular route was I wanted to really be able to write up my portfolio and talk in my interview about the way that I had applied my learning, the way that I had developed as a director. Now, that's not to say that everybody has to follow that model at all, but I just think for me it did help to be able to kind of illustrate the points I was making more with more of a real life bent to it. So if I take you back to the certificate, I think, and again Deborah's mentioned this, the certificate and the diploma just give you an incredibly good grounding around all the various aspects, the role of the director, right through to the overall governance and operating of a board. And I think to have that insight and that level of debate that you also have on these sessions, which is something else I'll touch on later on, it is really, really valuable. And in my particular case, I did the certificate, the diploma, and then I chose to go on and do an MBA at Exeter. And the desire to do the MBA was born out of the certificate and the diploma, because I thought to be a really credible compliance, safety, well-being professional, I wanted to be able to hold my own with the finance director, the HR director, the CEO. So that was my particular, the reason why I did it, and that was my particular route. I think the fact that they are modular and you can focus in on key areas. The analogy I would give you is it's the big jigsaw puzzle analogy, that you do the module, but they do all fit together to give you that bigger picture. That applies equally with the certificate and the diploma. And the other aspect I think is really important is that it's not just a once in a lifetime sort of exercise. There are regular refresher sessions, and there are regular other additional training added to the various programs. And yesterday I've been appointed to be chair of the Berkshire branch of IoD, and just yesterday I attended the role of the chair module again. And whilst I'd done it, and we discussed it when I did my certificate, diploma, I'm chairing a variety of different boards and committees. I went on it again yesterday as a way of refreshing my skills, and as you know, Stephen Covey would say, sharpening the saw. And it's not just the content that was reinforced to me yesterday. It's not just the taught material and the content of it. It is also the level of debate that you have with other delegates, the insight that you get. Yesterday's training was online, and it was as good as an in classroom, an in-room program. And I think one of the things we've seen out of the pandemic is that people are much more agile now, much more flexible, and much more comfortable working remotely than they were previously. So the way that the groups, the spin-out groups, the whiteboard, the discussion rooms, everything else works was just great. So don't be put off. Don't be put off by any of those aspects in various modules. So I think that the main thing for me, the reason I wanted to share with you what I'd done and the routes I had taken was because I wanted to be able to share with you that they are really, really valuable courses. I think there are courses out there. There are some courses out there that you can do that is just to get a certificate and get an attendance aspect to it. But I can honestly say every little bit that I did on the certificate, the diploma, and then fed into my MBA, I have used, and I use, you know, daily, weekly, monthly. So if any of you are considering the program, any of you are thinking about the Chartered Director journey, I can say from kind of first-hand experience that it's really well worth it, and it's really well designed, well structured, and valuable in terms of being able to apply it to your everyday practice. One other thing, I guess, my final thing I want to kind of cover off on it is to not be. I remember I felt quite apprehensive about the content and about the titles of the various the modules, but it is a journey and you're all in it together. So you learn as you are doing. So don't be put off. I know that there are aspects of it where it sounds, you know, very serious and very responsible, and it is a serious and responsible area that you're operating in, operating as a director and leading and running businesses. But nobody expects you to know everything about everything, and it is very much a leading you by the hand journey and taking you through it. I think the certificate into the diploma, fantastic. I think the diploma into Chartered Director is a whole different ball game, and what I mean is it really is a key differentiator. And one of the things that we're trying to do within the IoD, and I'm trying to do personally and with my ambassadors and team, is to really promote the value of the Chartered Directors, to get people to understand just how important it is and the rigour that goes behind it. Those of you that are not familiar with it, you submit an evidence-based portfolio, you write up your competence, and then you are interviewed by a panel. In my case, it was a couple of people, and they talk through the panel, and you have to demonstrate your competence and talk through the examples that you give. That is not just an academic exercise. They are kicking the tires on you being able to kind of walk the talk and understand the things that you're talking about. But when you come out of that, to say that you are a Chartered Director, one of only a very small number at the moment, something that we're hoping to grow, is incredibly, should be incredibly proud. And I would encourage you all to think about doing that, because if we want to change the landscape and change people's views on the role of their director, the importance of the chartered status, the importance of the IoD, we can do that through programs like Chartered Director. So that's pretty much my journey. I'd sum it up in 3 ways, and that is 3 points, and that is don't be put off or feel apprehensive. It is definitely a journey, and you do kind of learn as you're doing and learn as you're progressing. Point 2 would be the value of community and the people that are on your cohort, and the quality of the lecturers and certificates, etc., and delegates, both on the certificate and on the diploma. And the 3rd point is you'll never stop learning, you'll never stop using it. So I've done quite a lot of training in the past. I've done quite a lot of programs. I've done a PhD, I've done master's degrees, etc. But I think that this one, the certificate, the diploma, and the Chartered Director, both individually and combined, is absolutely fantastic and is a real game changer. And so I would encourage you all to really think about doing it. And if any of you want to talk about it offline, then by all means find me through LinkedIn. I'm happy for you to have my email address. I'm happy for you to have my phone number. Let's keep talking about it.
Thank you very much, Sean. That was great. I'm going to open up to Q&A in a moment, but I've got a couple of questions I want to ask, so I'm going to jump in beforehand. Obviously, many businesses at the moment are severely financially constrained. Of course they are, and they've got to choose how to best spend their budgets. So why should they choose the IoD? Why spend it here and not somewhere else?
I think that's a great question, and a very real question, and it's something that many of us are facing. I think there are a number of reasons. The content of the programme and the rigour that sits in it, and the quality and calibre of the attendees and the lecturers, the tutors, and also the weight and the backing of the IoD and the prestige that goes with that. So in the same reason, why do some people want to go to some universities and not others, and why have you got, why does Oxford and Cambridge have the really positive associations that it's got? It's because it's known for quality, and I'd put IoD right up there in that sort of same space, that it's known for quality and rigour and reputation.
Yeah, and it's internationally recognised as well, isn't it? I know myself I deliver the programme internationally, and for example, in Africa, many of the women there that we train will say they've only got the positions because of their qualifications. So it's definitely recognised. And I suppose that also leads me on. I'm sure we all suffer from this, Sean. We all think that we're the only ones, but the imposter syndrome. Personally, the first time I got on a board, I looked around and thought, well, everyone knows far more than I do, and why am I here, and I don't deserve this seat at the table. Did you have that, and how did the qualification help you?
I have that. I didn't have that. I have that. And I think lots of people do. And the reason I'm smiling is because it's a subject really close to my heart, and something that I work when I'm coaching and mentoring and working with colleagues and in other areas. I think imposter syndrome is real. I mean, give you the example. I'm from South Yorkshire originally. My mum was a home help. My dad worked in the steelworks. Pretty working class upbringing, and you get that little voice in your head that says, lads like you don't have PhDs, lads like you aren't non-exec directors, lads like you don't sit on boards, and you have to kind of quieten that voice. And qualifications and associations with organisations like IoD help that. And I think, in my experience, what you do is you let those voices have their moment, and then you just say, yeah, thank you very much, but I can back it up with this, that and the other, and kind of put the imposter syndrome voice in your head to bed. And I think qualifications do really help with that, and give you the confidence that you need to move on and to know that you know what you're talking about.
Thank you very much. Okay, I've asked enough questions. I'm going to hand back. Natasha, did you want to manage the Q&A?
Yes, absolutely. Hilary was asking about the mentoring process through the certificate journey. And I would say there wouldn't necessarily be a formal process, but actually the mentoring is within your group as peers. Would you agree, Sean, from your experience?
I would, and I'll tell you again that we keep coming back to the finance one. What I remember when I did mine, we had a really, really smart guy who was he was an accountant, he was operating as a finance director. He helped us through understanding some of the terminology and the practical application. I supported and mentored our group from a HR point of view, because some of the things that they weren't familiar with. So yeah, you quickly develop at the creeping death at the beginning of these sessions, where you're what's your name, where are you from, everybody hates, but there's a reason why you do them, because you're thinking as you're doing it, right, who's on this group, who might be able to help us, what's the network, and you quickly build up a group. And the mentoring piece and knowing where to get the various support from was really forthcoming and continued. People do keep in touch long after the programs have finished.
Can I just add to that as well? Obviously, the course leader they won't separately mentor you out in a formal way, but of course that's our role. And I'm really pleased you keep saying how scared you were of the finance, but it was all right in the end. My aim is not to send you away to say to your finance director, leave it to me, I'll take over from here. That is absolutely not the aim. But it's all about confidence, isn't it? And I think that's what's really come through from your experience, the confidence it gave you.
Yeah, and I was the same when I did my MBA. When I did my accounting and finance model on my MBA, I thought, I've got 10 fingers and 10 toes. What do I do when I run out of them? Because that was my level of maths, really. But actually, that's not what they're teaching you to do. They were teaching you to understand the language, the terminology. When people are talking about net present value and cash flow and balance sheets, what does it actually mean? Not that you need to run the business on the basis of that, but that you know enough to ask the questions. And that's what the main takeaway is, that you are conversationally competent rather than knowing the thread to the needle of a subject.
That's great, thank you. We have some questions in the chat, but I think some of those will probably be covered off with Josh's presentation. But if Josh is there, we'll bring Josh. Does anyone have any other questions? Please put your camera on if you would like to ask anything to Sean just now about his experience. And if not, don't be shy, you can put it in the chat and we can follow anything up at the end. Silence is golden, as they say, Sean. Okay, I think thank you so much for your time, and we will move on to some of the practical sides of the presentation. And Josh, are you there?
Certainly am.
Thank you, Josh.
I sit within the professional development team at the Institute of Directors. I'm one of the strategic account managers. I may have spoken to a few people on this call in the past, may not have, but effectively, if you have any kind of initial inquiries or questions around any of our professional development offerings, chances are you'll speak to myself or a member of my team. So in terms of the Digital Academy, it's really an unsung hero here at the IoD. Those 3 points that we mentioned there, helping to identify your strengths and development areas. We get so many members who, quite frankly, will sometimes even just want to use that particular feature of our Digital Academy. Yes, it's a self-assessment tool. And as with most self-assessment tools, they only help or are of any use to you if you are honest when you're using them. And by using that particular self-assessment tool, it enables you to really see if there are elements of your corporate governance that you could do with touching up on, or if it's strategy or finance or leadership. So again, absolutely fantastic tool, something that would always recommend that both those that are doing professional development with us and those that haven't done any PD with us would always recommend that it's something you should definitely look into. And as it quite rightly states there, it's derived from our director competency framework, which was a piece that we formulated quite a few years back, which really just outlines things that a competent director should feel comfortable conversating about. Point 2 there, in terms of preparing you for your course of qualification with pre-reading, course material, exam style questions and webinars. I mean, with all of that material there, and I'm sure anyone that has done PD with us or is about to embark on that journey will find it's incredibly helpful, not only whilst you're doing the professional development with us, but also once you've completed those sessions with us as well. It's, almost like having your own personal library that you can always refer back to. And it's also an area that we regularly update. So it's not a case of, you read some stuff about the corporate governance code from 2015 and you're stuck in 2015. It's a fantastic resource for you to continue to use. And the interactive CPD tracker, because we're an awarding body, as you would, in any other profession, whether you're a chartered accountant or a doctor or anything, any kind of vocation like that, we want you to continue to immerse yourself in some professional development. We want you to continue to make sure that you're being the best that you can be. And so, this is really just a fantastic way for you to stay on the top of your game once you've done some PD with us. And there's a lot more in the Digital Academy, but we probably don't have enough time to really rattle through it. But there's lots of thought leadership and interesting articles and just a whole world that is actually contained in there. Now, when it comes to the exams, with the certificate in company direction, there are 4 modules. So there's an exam for each one of the modules. Each one of the exams, they are 45 minutes each. They're held remotely, and we hold our exams once a month. So you have an opportunity to participate in effectively what is an exam day. On that exam day, it's completely up to you how many of the exams you want to take. I personally never recommend that people do more than 2 exams. As someone who's gone through this certificate myself and completed the exams and passed them, etc., I would always recommend that you do no more than 2 exams on an exam day. However, if you are very kind of comfortable and competent in one particular subject area, you may want to do 3 or even 4. It's not unheard of. I see, delegates do that all the time. And again, this is all down to personal choice. The exams themselves, it's 16 multiple choice questions. There are 20 marks that are available, and the pass mark is 50%. And again, what you'll find during the sessions is that the nature of the exams, it's not something where we're trying to catch people out or we're posing the questions in tricky ways. It's very much based around situations and scenarios that you're likely to encounter. And we're just building upon the experiences and the conversations that you would have been having on the course. So again, it's very much giving you the equipment and the skill set in order to do your role as a director to the best of your abilities. The diploma in company direction exam, as it says there, is 3 hours long, and it does consist of scenarios that you will be presented in form of board papers. And it's something that on the 3rd day of the diploma session, we do spend a bit of time, going through that exam prep. And as well as going through some exam preps and test questions during your study with us, it's worth noting that on the Digital Academy, there are test papers. So you do have mock exams for the certificate. At the diploma, not necessarily so much, but on the certificate level, you do have mock exams that you can take in advance of taking those certificate exams. And so that way you can, see how you're getting on. When you take those mock exams, you get feedback. So if you get, 14 out of the 16 questions right, the 2 that you don't quite get right, you will get feedback where it will say to you, right, here is the area that you want to look at, or, reference these materials in your particular handbook. And we also go as far as having some of our course leaders doing videos where they actually talk you through an exam. So they say, right, question 1, these are your 4 options. And then obviously a bit of a gap. And then it's a case of, right, on question 1, answer A was the correct answer. This is the reasons why. Answer B is not quite right, and these are the reasons why. And I think even my esteemed colleague, Deborah, I remember watching one of your videos where you went through the exam prep for the finance one, actually, ironically, when I was taking the finance exam. And I found your explanation of a lot of the answers very beneficial, and certainly helped me when I was doing the finance exam. So it's all there for you, basically, from the exam side of things. Now, I did see a question pop up in terms of the fees, and the fees are quite rightly outlined there. What you'll find at the certificate stage, there's always a slight cost benefit if you just pay for it all up front, because of then all 4 of your modules are kind of taken care of. Effectively, what you're looking at is your study and your examinations, everything that you need in order to get those individual awards, because for each module you get an award. And then when you complete all 4 modules, that's when you attain the certificate. But everything you need in order to get those individual awards is provided in the fee. So the exam fees included, all of your materials included, and obviously your participation in the session. Goes without saying, anyone with an eagle eye will see there, it certainly benefits you to be a member when you're going through any professional development with us. Quite frankly, even if you're going to do one single piece of study with us, so if you want to do the role of directing the board session, effectively, you're going to find that it works out more cost effective for you to be a member, because of the fee that you'll pay for your membership and then pay for your study with us will still work out more cost effective than if you were to do it as a non-member. The accelerated format of our certificate, I'm sure my colleagues have spoken to you about, but that's the residential session. The fees for doing it on an accelerated basis or doing it as the individual modules is exactly the same when you're paying up front. And then you've got your diploma fee there, which is 3,475. And then lastly, the chartered director interview there as well. So broadly speaking, if you wanted to work your way up all the way from certificate level all the way through to chartered, you can kind of tot up the cost there for yourselves. But there's no kind of urgency for you to have to do it all within a year or do it within 6 months, etc. A lot of times we get asked, well, what's the general time frame? I always say the time frame is whatever works for you. But in general, most people normally look to try and become chartered within 8 to 12 months. That's the general pathway that most people will try and follow, work permitting. And yeah, in terms of our dates are available on our website, I believe, and at the end of the day, if you also have any questions about further dates into the year, obviously with the current pandemic and situation, we've learned that the most effective way for us to ensure that people's journeys aren't disrupted is to really work with a plan on them. And that's really where myself and my colleagues that sit in the strategic account management team, where we come into play. So if you do have any ambitions about getting chartered or embarking upon this journey, all we'll simply say is drop us a line, and then that way we can help formulate a plan that works for you. But ultimately, I would always say, if you are looking to book on with us, do try and kind of go about 2 months into the future, purely because of a lot of our sessions get booked up quite far in advance. As I'm sure everyone on this call is very busy, so you have your kind of time frames and everything mapped out for at least the first 6 months of the year probably already. So we do tend to find that if you are looking to embark on the journey, contact us. We can map out a kind of route or a pathway for yourself, and then we can ensure that that doesn't get disrupted.